Hey guys, welcome back to Honey Badger Arcade. I am going to be replying to someone who left a comment on one of my videos recently. They wanted me to follow up on when I was talking about the fact that the landscape of Gamergate has changed, and there were more people that have more influence, and more of the people that I guess would have otherwise been in the middle ground have been motivated to action, to take interest, to speak up, to find their spines. Okay. I've been doing this for 10 years or longer. I remember when this started, like in late 2013, I think, and I've been involved in this from ever since. So even though it's gone by many different names, Gamergate, the Culture War, the Fandom Menace, Comicsgate, Metalgate, Shirtgate, etc., the general theme that runs throughout our entire culture is the same. And so only now, with the way the landscape has shifted, do we find ourselves in a position where we can truly make a positive change. And I just need more people to speak up, more people to be brave, and essentially share their thoughts. So I was talking about Elon Musk the other day, and I was referring specifically to how Elon Musk himself has basically made a strong case for video games, like for video games as a hobby, and being that he is arguably one of the richest men in the world, and with a massive company, and he's done tremendous work with Tesla and buying Twitter and everything else. You would think, and I'm not one typically to defer to celebrities or people of influence as proof of like whether or not I'm right or wrong about something, or whether or not something is right or wrong or good or bad. But being that the people that we deal with often do, like these people make appeals to authority, appeal to celebrity, appeal to popular belief, whatever, constantly. And so you need someone to at the very least be able to stand there and say you're wrong, so that the people who are they're not involved with this stuff, they're kind of on the outside looking in, they don't know what's going on, they will at least start to ask the question, wait a minute, if Elon Musk is saying this, then maybe there's something to it. I mean, I don't think that you should have to do that, but unfortunately, we live in a world where a lot of people do. So, Elon Musk was on the Lex Friedman podcast, and they had brought up the topic of video games, and it excited me because one of the video games he mentions is one of my favorite video games. But before we get into that, I just want to tell you the general, what we all know to be the sort of positive traits or advantages to playing video games. So I think a lot of you guys already know this. If you have more to add that you think video games are good for, like what good they can do, again, like anything else, as long as it doesn't become an addiction, let me know in the comments. So apparently it's obviously it's good for cognitive skills, your ability to problem solve, think critically, spatial awareness, your memory, your attention span, your ability to multitask. It's good for hand-eye coordination and motor skills. Like I think that honestly, my gamer background or my desire to play video games makes me a better driver. For example, right? Because I look at it like getting behind the wheel of my car. I look at it like playing a video game, which is kind of it's got to be like a Gen X thing, like Gen X and beyond, because I don't think like the previous generation would have thought of it in that context. But since I grew up on video games, that was kind of like where my brain went when I started driving, as an example. And if you got into doing something else like piloting a plane or maybe a boat or something, you might have had like a similar thought, right? Or even operating a gun. If you've been to a gun range, I think that that's another aspect. It's also good socially, despite what people will say. Not just because of competitive online play, which I don't think is necessarily bad, as long as everybody knows that they're just playing a game, which I think is usually what's being tested when you run into people who are let's say brutally honest online about your build or whatever the meta is. But it's really great for cooperative play, which is my favorite kind of play. I love to play co-op games. Couch co-op is the best. It's like the ultimate in my opinion. But like if I play it online, like I played Resident Evil 5 with Lindsay, and we played it from start to finish, and despite and even Resident Evil 6. And even though those games are considered low on the totem pole in terms of like quality for a Resident Evil game, the fact that it was two-player co-op and the fact that I was playing it with my wife and we were in the same building, sharing the space and talking to each other, that made it a blast. That's why Resident Evil 5 is, for me, one of my favorite games because I'm playing a co-op. It's why I play Helldivers, because Helldivers is a ton of fun. I love the cooperative play. I could get into why the commies hate Helldivers, but I don't want to do that now. That could make for another video later. But I do think the cooperative play and the sort of friendly environment without politics is a big part of the reason. Um, it's also good for stress reduction and relaxation, which is what I use it for. Like I haven't been gaming since I started Lent last week. Not much outside of what I do for work, but I haven't really been doing a lot of gaming for myself. But usually if I have a long day at work, like when I used to work a really stressful job, I used to work in this with contractors and people who did painting and drywall and stuff like that, and I was a supplier, and my job was incredibly stressful because these guys were working, it was like 2001, 2002. People were buying houses left and right at the time. There were a lot of new properties going up, people moving out, moving in to new apartments. And so these guys were on a time crunch constantly. And my job was so stressful that I was like, drinking entire bottles of RC Cola. When I was still drinking soda, which I quit like a while back, drinking giant bottles of RC Cola just to get through the day, just so I could, it was like my stress relief. But if I had a long day at work, I would come home and I would get on a very easy to play kind of like, it had to be a little challenging so that I was engaged, but not like so much so that it was frustrating. And I like to play the Tecmo Koei series of Dynasty Warriors games, and that was like my release. It would be Dynasty Warriors, Samurai Warriors, or even like Ken's Rage, which is like a Fist of the North Star style game of the same type. And it was good for that. It was a good stress reliever. So it's good for that. It's obviously art, which is one of my favorite things. I am an artist and I appreciate beauty in all its forms. I love music, I love movies, I love television, and I love video games. And I think, and books too. And it all is the same. It's all this sort of beautiful human thing. So there's plenty, and you can learn things from video games too. I know that there's a friend of mine who has a pretty big YouTube channel now named Max Derrat. He used to be a regular on my show. I would suggest you check him out. Maybe I'll put a link to his channel in the description. And he does these deep dives into, the philosophies behind video games or some of the sort of things that he's learned. He's gone through, for example, Metal Gear Solid is one of his most popular video series that he's done. He's talked about Metal Gear Solid 2. I think that was like the really big one because the Metal Gear Solid 2 is the one with Raiden. And at the end, there's this crazy thing that happens, and a lot of people are just completely lost. And Max Derrat just takes all of it apart and explains everything. It's really, really well done. He's also gone through Silent Hill, and he's gone through Bloodborne and Dark Souls. So I would say check it out. Lots of really good content. And again, things that you can learn about without even realizing it. Some of the stuff that you can learn. So I would recommend you check him out. And also I would also recommend, you can't find him on YouTube, but American Krogan has done a series of pretty decent videos on Mass Effect and on BioShock, and other sort of related content. I would also suggest that, although that one, I don't know, like you have to have a stomach for that because he gets pretty deep into it, but I think it's worth looking at. And it's also good for building community, obviously. This is the thing that this channel exists for. I want to build a community of gamers that, can essentially unapologetically just talk about what they're interested in and share insights and play video games with each other and just be left alone. And this is the thing that we're having so much trouble with. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into the Lex Fridman podcast clip where he is talking with Elon Musk and they are discussing video games. And I want to maybe I'll pause and give some commentary. It's a short video, so let's do this.
What do you get from video games in general? Is there for you
I mean, it's
personally?
it's I don't know if it calms my mind. I mean, you sort of killing the demons in a video game calms the demons in my mind. You know, if you play a tough video game, you can get into like a state of flow, which is very enjoyable. And but admittedly, it needs to be not too easy, not too hard, um, kind of in the Goldilocks zone. And I guess you generally want to feel like you're progressing in the game.
Yeah, so this is the thing that I thought was interesting. So he mentions a flow state. Now, I don't know if you've heard of this concept of flow state, but it's sort of like, where your unconscious is like, working really hard while you're doing something. It's meditative. And when I play video games, in the morning, I would like, have my morning coffee, and I would listen to a video of something like whatever I'm watching YouTube, or maybe listening to music. I have a record player, I might put on some music, and my wife would get up, and we would be having coffee and talking, and there'd be music in the background, and I'd be playing. So I'm like doing like four things, right? and I'd be playing a game, but usually it's something like a fighting game, because I love fighting games. Um, and I find them, that it's maybe it seems ironic, but I find them to be kind of relaxing, as I'm like learning new things. Because the thing about fighting games is really interesting, is a really good fighting game. You get, the more you play it, the more you experiment with new techniques, or combos, or maybe little things you've never tried before, features or whatever, and then you kind of like explore that a little bit more. So it's like one of these games. Fighting games are an interesting genre because you keep getting better at it the more you play it, and that means failing a lot at first. Souls likes are like that too, and I'm a huge fan of Dark Souls. Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Bloodborne, and Elden Ring. Um, and other games like it, Sekiro, etc. And so I will also play those. And you get into a flow state, because the Soul series in particular, there's like this sense that, like, most of what is in the game is nothing. You're just sort of exploring and walking along, and the number of enemies are finite, because finite in the sense that there aren't like giant swarms like you might find in a Devil May Cry type of game, where you're like hit with waves of enemies because it's an action game. Instead, the waves are small, but the enemies are tougher. So each encounter in Dark Souls is like a little boss fight before the boss fights, right? Like, you have to consider your environment and everything else, but for the most part, you're just kind of walking around, and there's not a lot of music in the game, and it's mostly environments, and you're taking it all in. Like, Bloodborne is especially good about that. There's lots of really beautiful, design, and it's very beautiful stuff. So it gets you into a state of meditation, or a state of flow. And it's sort of like when you're doing a task, like sometimes when I'm drawing, I would get into a flow state, and I won't even notice, and everything is just coming out exactly the way I want it. And I can't recapture that very easily. But when I'm playing video games, I can like get into a state, and I'll be thinking about things too. Like, while all of those other things are going on, I'm playing games. I'm kind of planning my day in my mind. I'm like playing through, what am I gonna do today? Okay, like how, and it does. It's not active. It's not obsessive. It's just kind of like happening. And I think there's something about people like Musk, who I gotta say is at least a genius of some kind, that he enjoys gaming so much. And I do think that it is like, you got to have a high IQ to understand gaming. No, I'm kidding, but you know what I'm saying. It's kind of that kind of pursuit. It's a certain kind of person that's going to get into this. But anyway, let's play some more.
Game. So a good video, and there's also beautiful art, engaging storylines, and it's like an amazing puzzle to solve, I think. And so it's like solving the puzzle.
Elden Ring, the greatest game of all time. I still haven't played it, but you.
Elden Ring is definitely a candidate for best game ever. Top 5 for sure.
I think I've been scared how hard it is, or how hard I hear it is. So, but is
Just real quick, Elden Ring is fantastic. probably the easiest Souls game, though, to be honest. Like, you are not. I would say it's the easiest Souls game. Like, your builds can be insane. You can take it at whatever pace you want. You can avoid boss fights, like a lot of them, if not most of them, to be honest. But you're gonna want to go back, and you have to be brave. This is another thing. You know, the thing about the FromSoft games is that if you want to finish them, if you want to enjoy the experience, if you want to be a part of the Get Good Club, which is not an elitist thing, all you have to do is be willing to fail, and then like dust yourself off and try again. And that's kind of what that was the philosophy behind Miyazaki, the director of the Souls of Dark Souls and Elden Ring and Demon Souls, etc. That was the philosophy that behind it. Is it's all about the struggle. And when you realize that, the game's not hard. Like, people have played through these games with like a Guitar Hero controller. People who are paraplegics have and like no arms have beaten Dark Souls. Like, you can do it. Okay. and this is the thing about the woke, by the way, that I'm not saying that Alex Friedman is one of these people. Or Lex Friedman, whatever. I'm not saying that he's like this. I don't know his deal. But the thing is that the pretense that this game is too hard, therefore it must be changed so that more people can play it, that is the problem. That's one of the things we're fighting against, because we have to understand that not every game is for everybody, and that's okay. You know? It just is. It's okay. Like, if you want to play a first-person game that has no combat, you can play Gone Home. I don't want it banned. You can play it if you want to. If you want to play something that's hardcore, you can play, Doom Eternal. And that's fine too, right? So anyway, let's finish this. But yeah, Elden Ring is definitely it's a tremendous game.
It's beautiful.
Elden Ring feels like it's designed by an alien.
There's a theme to this discussion. In what way?
It's so unusual. It's incredibly creative, and the art is stunning. I recommend playing it on a big resolution, high dynamic range TV. Even doesn't need.
Yeah, the thing about art too, I think that people miss, and I won't go too much longer. This will be a try and make this short. Is that it's not about the graphic fidelity. It's not about the frame rate. It's not about the resolution. It's not about the ray tracing or whatever. It's about the design, the art design. One thing I've noticed, and I saw that Grums said this, and I think this is great. One thing I've noticed is that I've been talking about this for a while, actually. AAA game studios in particular, but a lot of game studios, they have become ultra focused on games that have photorealistic graphics. Like they want the games to look like movies. And I want to caution against this, at least as a net good, like without like any sort of critical eye, because I think the more realistic you make it, the less creative it becomes. And what Elden Ring does is that, because people have talked about how Bloodborne, for example, it runs at 30 frames per second, and the graphics are like old. I mean, the game came out in like 2009 or 10 or something. So it's not like it's maybe it's 2013. Doesn't matter. I'm sure somebody will correct me in the comments. What I'm saying is that Bloodborne's over 10 years old. But from an art direction perspective, it is beautiful. Like, the art direction, that is like essentially, like, look at this shot here from Elden Ring. Okay, you can see like there's fog and these like what appear to be the tops of buildings or other structures down there on the ground level, and you have these like cliffs peeking out from the fog, and in the distance there are golden trees, and far in the distance there's like a mountain of some kind, and there's these bridges, and all of these places you can go there. All of these places. This is I think this is like where the school, Lucaria, the magic school, is in the center there. All those places you can go there. Those are real places. But they do this really cool thing where they use the limits of the hardware to enhance the mood of the environment, right? It adds to it, and that's art direction. That's not graphic fidelity. In fact, I mean, like there are classic games like Silent Hill and the original Metal Gear on the Japanese Famicom that became household names because they were working with it with limitations, you know, and they had to like do something to compensate. So Silent Hill had the fog because of the draw distance limitations of the PlayStation 1, and so they had to like work with that. And now it's like, you know, when they try to do a remastered version, because now we have like the higher end graphics, you lose something because it doesn't have that same, you know, feeling that there's something close, but you can't see it because of the fog. And that's what Silent Hill did. So art direction is not graphics. And Elden Ring, or the folks at From Software, after Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 3, I think Dark Souls 2 is a little weaker, but it does have some moments that are great. Dark Souls series, Demon Souls, Bloodborne in particular, and Elden Ring, Sekiro, they're all beautiful games. Beautiful. They may not have the most refined graphics. They may not have the highest frame rates. They may not have like all the slick, you know, new stuff, but they're beautiful in terms of their visual, the vision being realized. You can see that you're in another world. And that's the purpose, right? Okay, let's continue.
Needs to be a monitor. Just the art is incredible. It's so beautiful. And it's so unusual. And each of those top boss battles is unique. Like it's like a unique puzzle to solve. Each one's different. And the strategy you use to solve one battle is different from another battle.
That said, you said Druid and Eternal against Uber Lilith is the hardest boss battle you've ever.
Correct. That is currently and I've played a lot of video games because it's my primary recreational activity.
Yes.
And yes, beating hatred in the Eternal Realm is the hardest boss battle in life and in the video game.
I love that he ends it by saying beating hatred, because that's kind of what we're up against, right? But he's referring to Diablo 4. So anyway, that's Elon Musk on video games. So you can see that he is, at least he appears to be, you know, generally sympathetic to us. And he has said that Sweet Baby Inc. is doing evil. And he's called out BlackRock. And he's called out these giant corporations and politicians and stuff that's going on in our country and in the Western world. So I think that being into video games is actually one of the things that enhances people's ability to recognize patterns. And maybe there are patterns in life that we should be aware of. Anyway, that's it for me. Thanks so much. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments. I'll include a link to Elon Musk's video so you can see it yourself. It's just a short clip, as well as Max Derrat's channel. Thanks so much for coming on, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Get me to 500 subs. I'm going to set up a Discord server for this channel over the weekend. So see you guys the next time. Long live Vivian.